Okay, everyone, it is 8:30 p.m. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. What a great festive Saturday night. A couple quick announcements. This group has a Facebook page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Keeps us connected not only to this group, but things going on in the whole area. If you have any events, workshops, anniversaries, any kind of festivities to do with Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery, please feel free to post that. It'd be a good idea to get connected. We also have a website. You can Google it real simple. Go on Google. Saturday night, 1 hour speaker meeting. Doylestown comes up. Has a list of the speakers who's going to be here. We work very hard. There's a lot of people behind the scenes do a lot of work to make sure that this group runs efficiently and smoothly each week. And our speakers come from long and far away just to share their experience, strength, and hope. So be mindful at the end of the meeting. What we usually do is form a line and thank them for coming here at their own time and expense. It's a courtesy that they extend to us and just to show our gratitude for what they do. What they volunteer of their own coming here. What else do I got? Just please be mindful that there is in the back there's a bucket. I don't know what you call it, a jar or whatever it is. We collect money for big books and CD donations. So if you miss the basket or if you feel like if you got some unfinished amends and you want to help out, throw it in there. We'll put it to good work. And hey, you guys, if all of a sudden we're eating like lobster tail the next week, you know somebody made some good amends. But anyway, let Brian come up here and let's have some fun. Thanks.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. This is a 1 hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. The business meeting for this group meets here every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. If there's anyone that is new or from out of town, if you'd like to, please introduce yourself on a first-name basis. Jenna, welcome. Welcome. Yes. Welcome. Michael, welcome. Kevin, welcome. In the back there. Welcome. Get everybody? Okay. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. All right, so those are your sponsors. If you're new or if you've been around for a while and you're still struggling, grab one of those people after the meeting and hopefully we'll help you get a look into the solution. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Nobody has anything? Okay. A couple announcements for this group. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations, as Ron said, in the jar on the back, marked big book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And with that, I believe Joe's going to come up here. He's going to read the AA preamble.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joe. I'm an alcoholic. All right. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're all self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organizations, or institution, and does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And who's doing 12 steps? Chris is coming up to do 12 steps.
My name is Chris, and I am an alcoholic. I would like to thank everyone on the behalf of the entire Conscious Contact Speakers Group for coming to Doylestown and sharing with us tonight. If you would like... It's not here. I've seen them, but here they are. Thank you. The 12 steps of recovery. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Okay, 7th tradition, every AAA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This time we're going to pass around the basket. There are no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. Your contributions help us to cover the cost of rent, big books, workshops, refreshments in the back, so any contribution is appreciated. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. That's the church's policy. We're very blessed to have this facility to use for our meeting, And really all they ask of us is that we refrain from smoking on the property, keep it off the premises, keep it clean. So if you could please be considerate of that, help us out as you're coming and going. It'd be greatly appreciated. At this time, please silence your cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, on loan to us from the Primary Purpose Group of Bel Air, Maryland. Please help me welcome Mike Glass.
What a beautiful group of people. My name is Michael Schoaf, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's really good to be up here with you. I just found out I was doing this a couple days ago. The original speaker, there were some challenges, and it just didn't work out. So thank you, Ron, for reaching out to me. And I might not have been the original choice for tonight, but I was God's choice. And anytime I get to be God's choice, it's a really cool privilege. It's a really cool privilege. My home group is the Primary Purpose Group. We meet in Bel Air, Maryland. It's about 2 hours south of here. We meet on Tuesdays at standard drunk time, 8:30. And that's how it works in the Baltimore area. On Tuesday nights, we have a speaker meeting. It's a 10-minute speaker that just talks on the primary purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous, followed by a 45-minute main speaker. And then on Thursday nights at 8:30, we also have a meeting it's called Breaking Down the Big Book, where we just take a section of the big book and we spend an hour on it. On average, we don't get much further than 3 sentences a week. So it's definitely a pretty cool, really cool approach. I haven't found it necessary. Well, by the grace of God, I haven't had a drink since September 4th of 2017. It's the last day I found it necessary to put a drink in me. And I'll tell you what, that is the grace of God in and of itself. Because, folks, I love whiskey. I love some whiskey. And there are days that I still, to this day, go about my life, and I'm not even sure. I mean, these 12 steps have absolutely absolutely 100% transformed my life and put me into a relationship with a God that has exploded inside of my heart. I mean exploded. And it's just 180 degrees. Changed the way I think, the way I see, the way I live. But with all that, I still don't know how in the world God managed to take my hand and pry it off that bottle. You know what I mean? It is just, I can't figure it out. I work with guys today, and they're trying to get off the bottle, and some days I just don't even know what to tell them. I'm like, you better pray hard. Because every one of us sitting in this room, the only way the bottle gets out of our hand is by the grace of God. Once the bottle's out and the cement's wet, I got a solution. And if we work quick enough, we can get on track before that cement dries. That was my experience. And I'll tell you a little bit about my life before, like my life that brought me to you guys. You know what I mean? And so I grew up in a town called Hagerstown, Maryland. Was born into a really, really church Christian home. And let me explain what I mean by that. Because there's varying degrees of Christian. The way we grew up was on Sunday, we had church twice. So in the beginning, it wasn't an 8:30 service and a 10:30 service. It was a 8:30 service that went till noon. And then you went home, you had lunch, and you came back from 6 until 10. You were graced to have off on Monday, but Tuesday you were back for Bible quiz. You know what I mean? And you had your whole church session there. On Wednesdays, we had youth group, and we were in there all evening. On Thursdays, we weren't allowed to do whatever the Boy Scouts were. We had our own private sector that called Royal Rangers. So I was a Royal Ranger and a pioneer. We did all kinds of stuff like the Boy Scouts, but it was done in the church. Fridays we were graced off, and then Saturdays were like our outreach days. You know what I mean? And throughout that's just church. Then when we get home, I have no secular television. I have no secular music. I'm not even allowed to watch the Smurfs, guys, because they have wizards. I mean, we're talking, it was some serious stuff. And no trick-or-treating because that's the devil's holiday. You don't go out there and, don't have sleepovers. We don't even have Easter because there's bunnies involved. You know what I mean? We have Resurrection Day. And, growing up, I had no clue. The only thing I had outside of church was sports. And I was an avid player of baseball, handball, and soccer. And, it's kind of interesting, and I emphasize like this whole experience with church because of the foundation that I began to develop of what God is, of what that life with God looks like. It was forged in me as this life that you just have these really tight parameters, you know what I mean? We don't smoke, spit, or chew, or run with those who do. We don't, cuss. We don't, when we get punched, you just smile and you forgive people, you know what I mean? And I just always wanted to kill people in those situations. I never understood this grace and compassion, you know what I mean? I kind of thought I had loopholes, but I could never get it, But here's the thing. I gave it a fair shot, and I really tried. And there were times where I felt like I was connected, but in hindsight, really, my ego found some validation there. And I felt like I was accepted a little bit, and it was okay, but I just didn't get a deep down resolve at that period of my life. Soccer was my big sport, man. I played all over the country, played all over the state and region, played all kinds of levels, travel select club, ODP, and in that playing throughout my life, by the time high school started up, so now I'm 14 years old and I'm going to try out for high school sports. We go for those 2 weeks prior to school, and I make the varsity team within 3 days, right? So I'm playing with these varsity guys. It's sort of my only place to puff my chest out, it's just my jam. And these guys said, hey man, if you want to come to a party tonight. And I said, well, let me ask my mom and dad, see what I can do here. And my mom and dad, they knew these guys, and they said, yeah. They were the drinkers like us that, kept the real good mask on, you know what I mean? But if my parents only knew, oh geez. But they let me go out to be home by 10, so we went out to this party, guys, and we went to this big, huge bar. Now, mind you, I show up for this, getting picked up in this little Isuzu pup, man, and I've got I got my vest on, right? I have a bright green Izod shirt. It's pressed, right? Half thigh cargo shorts. 2 socks up to my knees with a pair of Birkenstocks, right? It is 1993 and I'm on fire, right? We're getting it. And I go out to this event, man, and we get in this truck and we show up at this party, and I'm telling you what, we pull up and we park in the grass. You know, we start walking, you can hear the coming from this barn, you can see the freaking bonfires going, you can hear the ruckus, and I mean, I just start to get nervous, you know. The closer we get, I'm like, what is going on? And man, those doors open, and then I start getting knobbered handles and Jack Daniels joints the size of Cheech and Chong movies. I mean, it was just, and everywhere I went, I was like, absolutely not. You know, I had a church upbringing, and I knew that this isn't what we do. So when they asked me if I was okay, what do we say? I am fine. There you go. There's my man. That's better. I could like hear myself. You ever had a cell phone call like that? And you're like, I gotta call you back. Good job. Good job, Ron. And everything just settled down. That's cool. So I get down, you know, I get to this point, I'm fine. You know, I'm fine. I'm just standing there all awkward, man. I'm telling you what, there are people, like there's white dudes with dreads. There's people like with clothes ripped in half because they chose to. There are people doing things with other people that I have never witnessed. You know what I mean? That's like the part where your parents covered the TV growing up. You know what I mean? And Metallica shirts. I thought Metallica was like a brand name. This is like, I had no idea it was a band. I'd never even been exposed to anything other than like Twyla Paris or something. You know what I mean? Or some kind of Christian band. I don't know. And I'm just like, what is happening here? And Steve, like about a half an hour in that night, Steve said, hey, you want to do anything here? Are you just going to stand here? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm looking around this room, and as I'm looking across in the back right corner, I see these 3 guys with just long hair and raggedy hemp chains and all kinds of stuff with this big yellow funnel. And I'd never seen that before. I said, I'll try that. So they take me back to this big yellow funnel, and I get up on one of these hay bales, and this guy gives me specific instructions. They put 3 Milwaukee beasts into this thing. They kinked this hose, and they hand it to me, and they said, when we lift it up, don't swallow it. Just open your throat, man. And I'm like, don't swallow. Just open it. And man, they jump up to the next hay bale, and all of a sudden it's coming down, and I start to swallow, and then I clench, and then I go, open my throat. And I mean, then I start to aspirate, and then I close it up a little bit, and it just goes. It was intense. I made it sound intense because it was intense. Right? And I mean, this stuff's going down into my chest, and my chest is freezing up. My ears are like ringing. My eyeballs are popping. I swear blood's coming out of my freaking temples. Beer's shooting out of my nose, and I'm sucking it back in midair. And it's not because I was an alcoholic, guys. It's because my ego was so afraid of making a mistake. You know what I mean? And man, I finally get it down, and that whole thing just drops into my belly, and everyone's clapping, and they're like, do you want to do it again? And I said, no. No, I do not. No, I do not. And the reason I didn't want to do it again was because I had no clue what just happened. You know what I mean? There was no recreating that event. I will practice on my own later, but that's not in a group. Lord God, it was crazy. And then what happened, guys, is they cheered, and I felt okay, and then they stopped cheering, and the next person went up, and then I felt alone again. And I walked around, and about 20 minutes later, it happened. You know what I mean? It happened. That booze hit me, and I'm here to report, folks, I was born again. I was baptized in Ethel. I had found my Savior, and it was over. Everything they ever taught me in church, everything they ever told me, it happened right there. And it was magic. You know, for the first time in my life, man, it sank in, and I'm here to tell you, I fit me just right. I didn't want for any more. I didn't need to change. I didn't need you to like me, because I just loved being Michael Show. I was cool with church. I was cool without the Smurfs. You know what I mean? I felt like church would be better if we all did this first. However, that would play out, you know. Over the next few years, I would develop quite a different philosophy as booze, LSD, and Sunday school began to get combined. However, let me just tell you what happened that night was just magical in my world, and what happened was I was transformed. It was the closest thing to a spiritual experience I've ever had in my life before coming here. I just understood it all, I knew it all, and I'm telling you what, I would go on to drink for many, 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 many years after this, with many, 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 many consequences. And never once did I ever set out to get drunk. Never once did I pick up a drink and say, we're going to get hammered tonight. I picked up that drink just to be me every single time. And as a result, I got hammered. That's kind of what happened. You know, but I'm telling you, I never set out for that, right? I wanted the absolute freedom that I found in that bottle. Absolute freedom, guys. That's why I drank. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. But I'll tell you what alcohol does for me and what it did for my wife were two very different things. What it did for me and what it did for my parents were two very different things. You know, what it did for me and what it did for the other 93% of the world, or whatever heck percentage it is out there, is very, very different. You know what I mean? I went to school that week. After I started up, I'm sitting in class drawing funnels on paper. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about this stuff, and I'm telling you, like, alcohol, it wasn't a party. It was something that made so much sense to me that it just naturally felt like I should be incorporated into other things, like school, work, parenting, PTA. You name it, man. As things came into my life and as that place of disconnect hit me, the only thing I knew to connect to seemingly what I felt was power to myself and to you was found in a bottle of whiskey. And I went on to drink for many, 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 many years. So my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, guys, I'm here telling you I found my way here in September of 2017, but my first meeting was in April of 1997, at the ripe age of 18 years old. I am not a first nighter. I am not a first decader. All right? Let's be very clear. My experience is much more vast on what not to do than it is on what to do. I have a lot of experience with that. But what I also know is that I'm not going to go through this whole story because I want to spend a majority of tonight just sharing with you like the way that God has just penetrated my heart. But let me just tell you in a nutshell what would happen from that first beer bong in 1993 until 2017 is that I would drink until the consequences got really tough. And then I would end up being forcefully put into a facility. And then that facility would put me on a white van, and that white van would bring me to you. That's the cycle of my life. A lot of times before the facility in the white van came a white room with a Velcro outfit. That was occasional as well. I never really wanted to kill myself. I don't know why they put me in Velcro. I was okay with killing others, but never really me. But they felt that these things were important. I tell you, I went through periods where then I would get, what I would do is I'd come out of that and I'd say, what the problem was? It's this job. So I'd get a good different job that helped me drink a little bit better. You know what I mean? Restaurants were good for that. I found that meetings, I got into a professional career and where, you had drinks over meetings. Those were really good too, right? And then I found that none of those worked, so I started my own business. And I found that was really, I didn't have anyone to answer to. So I had a couple businesses. That all went to too. But in the course of it, I would do that. And then in the course of this too, I ended up, somehow managing to go in and out of relationships. And I managed to find a woman to take oxygen married and have kids. I had 4 kids by the time I was 28 years old. I don't know if it was the whiskey or if it was just the 2 of us. I have no clue, man, but we were taking off with that. And so I've had like all these ups and downs, but the cycle of it all is I drink and I cross a line somewhere where once I pick up that drink, I cannot without certainty tell you what it's going to look like, and I cannot tell you when it's going to be able to be put down. But I will tell you this, if it does get put down, it's not because I made a decision to. And then once that booze gets out of my system and I'm sober, I cannot with any certainty tell you when it's going to be back in me again. But one thing I can almost promise you is that it will. It's the only thing I know how to hold on to, guys. It's the only thing I have faith in. It's the only thing I love. It's the only thing I trust. And I don't know how to break that relationship. I don't know how to break up with the bottle. So they send me to AA. I find a guy that introduces me to this, and I start to do the work. And you know what happens? Good stuff. Inevitably. But somewhere along the line, 3 to 6 months in, this seems like it's a little redundant. So, I got a different plan. It might be financially based. It might be relationship based. It might just be, I just got a plan. It doesn't take much, guys. I have about 100 plans a day. Even to this day, I have a lot of them. And, but what I would do is I would switch gears, right? I would say, thank you guys for your time. I'll still come see you. Trust me, man. We'll keep in touch. It's like leaving high school. Don't worry, dudes. I'll stay in touch forever. And that's how I would go with it. I'll be back, man. I'm just going to do this. God didn't get me sober to be in chairs all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I got sober to, do something with my life. I'd be back in a white van about 3 months later, guys. I'm not kidding you. One of my amends was, I had one of my old home groups. I had a Hellman's mayonnaise jar full of chips. 24 hour, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Sometimes, one time, there was like the extra rare 11-month chip. You know what I mean? That was impressive. But that was me. I'm the guy that you guys see somewhere in your area. You have one. The guy that gets a 24-hour chip every week. The guy that gets a 2-month chip finally once a year, and you think he's made it, and then he's already been sponsored by 28 of the guys in your area that maybe this guy can help him. You don't answer my phone call because you know you need at least 30 minutes to listen to me emotionally vomit. And you better have a pack of cigarettes and a place to pick me up and take me to. You know what I mean? That's me. I'm that guy. For years. And I would get a plan, I would go back, and inevitably what happens is as I become that actor and I become that director, I developed, even when the show comes off apparently well, does it really? Does it really? Is the question. I'm okay. Am I really? Is the question. But I will tell you I'm fine. And I go about my life like this, guys, and I'm going to tell you, what ends up happening in this is through the course of these 20 years, I go through 15 treatment centers. I go through 5 psychiatric hospitals. I go through dozens of detoxes. I go through a dozen recovery homes. I've been married for 16 years. 9 of those years I did not even live present with my family because of being in places like that. And I can put together 6 or 9 months, but I just can't seem to get it. So what happens to me at the very end is that I end up at this place where I get out of treatment center number 14. And, the wife and kids, they decide it's okay to have Michael come back home. They definitely believe I'm a changed man this time. And I probably kind of was, to some degree. You know what I mean? I don't know. I was in a good mood because I was getting what I wanted. And, but I got to go home and I got a job at a hotel in Northern Virginia. And I'm living with them guys. And I was there for no more than about 3 weeks before I completely moved home, rest all my energy into this the financial crisis at home, the organizational crisis at home, the whatever other crisis, and I just don't have time for AA, right? So, lo and behold, about 3 weeks in, I got a drink in my hand. And so, you'll see a lot of people like this, guys. There's a lot of people that you'll run around that I'm not one to say, what's right and wrong, man, but, I'm not the kind of guy that can go to 2 or 3 meetings a week and be okay. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy that can just not sponsor people and help others and be okay. I'm not that guy that can practice principles occasionally. I'm just not that guy. And what happens is when I get away from it, that disconnect gets so strong in me that I just don't know what to do. And before you know it, there's a drink in my hand, and that's what happened. 3 weeks after being sober for a whopping 10 months. And I ended up going to town. The first night was a half pint, the next night was a pint, the next night was 2 pints, the next night was 3, the next night was a handle, and then it just stayed right about there. Night after night, I lost my job. I got fired from the hotel that I was working in. They just don't take kindly to, hotel management with that type of an approach to work. And I start saying things and doing things that aren't the most HR appropriate. And there's a lot of trouble you can get into in a hotel. Trust me, man. I've been on the flip side too. And so there's all this kind of stuff going on. And so that night they tell me I'm gone. I have to leave. So I go to my truck. I grab my handle. Now at this time I have restraining orders against me everywhere. Everywhere. There's a lot of benzos mixed in with these booze too, guys. So it's demonic violence, right? It gets crazy. And I'm the guy that'll throw a bicycle through your bay window and then whistle at you to come down. True story, it has happened. And I was a year sober, and I went back to visit Virginia, and I had my car pulled in, and I got out, and I started walking, all the parents, come on, kids, it's him, I'm that guy. I ended up making amends down my whole block. It was crazy. And some of them made it through the door. They wouldn't even let me the whole way in. What we do. But I have these training orders. So what I decided to do in my infinite wisdom is I need help, and I have this sense of impending doom. So I go to my family, I go to my wife's house, and I say, go in. Instead of not knocking on the door, I just open it up and I go inside. And I just walk up the steps to the bedrooms. It's only about 10 o'clock at night, and then there they all are, right? So I'm standing there in a suit similar to this, with a handle or 750 Evan Williams, or a 2175 or whatever, and they all have their phones with 911 on speed dial. And I said, I need some help. I need some help. And they're like, okay. Well, why don't we take you to the hospital? I said, no, I need help. That's awesome. And they're like, well, you're going to go to the hospital. I said, okay, we'll take in my truck, because that's where the booze is, my truck. So we agree, and I go to this hospital, and I just go work on this jug the whole way there, and I have to put it down. They won't let me bring it inside. And so Kizzy says, Michael, you have a seat here, and if you guys are ever, one of these days, you got to hear the story from her and the kids. It's even better than I tell it. But she says, sit down here, Michael. And she goes and gets the lady. She says, my husband's drunk. He needs to come. Now, mind you, at this point, I'm talking pretty sanely, but I have this sense inside that something really dangerous is about to go down. It's you ever had that place where you're backed in a corner? And it's just the world's crumbling, and you just, you can just taste the danger on the tip of your tongue. And that's where I was at. So they came over, and they took my blood, and they did my blood pressure and everything like that, and came back about a half an hour later and said, Mr. Schroth, you got a 0.64 blood alcohol level. There's nothing we can do right now. You just need to have a seat and wait. 8 hours later, think we overreacted here, folks. So I try to leave. I'm going to my truck. You know what I mean? This was, whoa, what were we thinking? I don't need help right now. You know what I mean? Let me just get a drink, then I'll come back, you know? And they were like, no, you're going to come with us. And the security guards held on to me, cuffed me, and took me back to a room. And about another 10 hours passes, guys, and here's what happens, man, is my body shuts down. It won't respond to the medications, and they have to medically induce me into a coma. My wife has to sign advanced medical directives. They look at her and my kids, say I give them a 25% chance of living through the withdrawal. We'll see what happens. That's September 4th, 2017. And guys, this isn't new. This is a copy-paste of the last 3 times I've been into a detox. This is what happens. 2 days later, I open my eyes. I've got a ventilation tube down my throat, a feeding tube up my nose, and I have a catheter where catheters go. And I've got wires in every part of my brain, my heart, my arms, everything going on. And I start to take this off, and my room gets flooded with nurses, and Kizzy comes over, and she says, you know, Michael, what's going on? You know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Michael Shove? And guys, here's where my recovery began. I believe this. This was on September 6th of 2017. She came over and she wants to know where I'm going to go from here. And I looked at her square in the eyes and I said, all I really need right now is a drink. I just need a glass of whiskey. And she said, Michael Shove, we are done. We're done. And guys, that was the beginning of my divorce. That was the beginning of the separation of my children. That was the beginning of the end. But you know what was really amazing about that? It's the first time that what I was thinking, what was in my heart, was the same thing that came out of my mouth. And I told the truth. And I was able to be honest. I don't want a solution. I don't want to stop. I'm not done. I'm not done. I've been in and out enough, guys, to tell you. It's hard for me. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I'm done. Are you done drinking, boy? It feels that way, you know what I mean? But I've proven many times that all it takes is for me to follow some of this creative thinking I got going on, and I'm not done. You know, I am fully on it. I'll be done when you put me in the ground. That's when I'm done, right? But I'm an alcoholic. Birds fly, fish swim, I drink whiskey. That's what I do. And I'm not done. So, here's what happens next. I end up getting a call from this treatment center that I was at in Baltimore a prior time from a lady, so I'm not going to say her name, but she was very attractive, very hot woman. And she called, and it rings in my room, and it says, she says, Michael, this is the very attractive woman. And from this specific treatment center. And I said, hey. She's like, will you come back? Now here's what I deducted. Kizzy called the treatment center and already told them what was going on. Told her we're getting divorced. She's done with me. And if I can get sober, this lady has a shot with me. So I said, yes, I'll come. My sobriety date I call September 7th because I made a decision that next day to go into a more proper detox and to go into treatment center. It was the first day that I began taking action in my life. So that next day, September 7th, I went up to New Jersey for 5 days, 6 days, I don't even know, 5 days. And then, ironically enough, September 11th, I land in this treatment center, only to find out that this therapist has no interest in me whatsoever. God used my delusion to get me there. Where's the time go when you do this stuff, man? So here's what happens, guys. Here's what happens. I get into this treatment center, and it's a long-term treatment center. right? You live there, you go to this stuff, you do all this, and they're on you like white on rice, man. I mean, it's like you can't turn around without having some kind of monitoring, right? But they let you go out every night with a sober support. Anyone who's been sober for at least a year, right? So they are very selective with who gets to take me out. I can't just pick anyone. And they start putting me with some pretty strict members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what these men began to do is bother me. And they go around and every time I tell them something, they just laugh. They laugh at me. And I'm just like, ew. And all I can think about is when we get out of this car, I'm going to use the bathroom in that meeting, and I'm going to cut your brake lines. And wait, I got to ride home with you. I'm not going to cut your brake lines. You know, this is where my head's going, dude. And I'm going grocery shopping, and I'm going down like the soap aisle, and I see scissors, and I'm thinking about just freaking cutting people. I mean, it's all through my head, just this rage and this violence. Like I come into these rooms and people say, "What are you going to do different this time, buddy?" And I'm like, "You know what I'm going to do to you?" And it's just like, God, I'm going to freaking shove a big look at your life, buddy. You know what I mean? And every day I wake up and I'm miserable and I'm trying to figure out who's responsible for it. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I just can't breathe. And we had this one event, we were going to paint trees at a forest, right? Paint trees. Like, how environmentally friendly can this be, right? But we're painting trees for a foundation. And we're waiting on a bench to just paint trees, man. And I'm telling you what happens is I'm sitting there, all I want to do is just pour kerosene into this forest and light it. And there's a guy who was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous who was standing over here. And he looked at me. Now, I don't think I was saying all this, but I'm sure my body language is screaming, "You bunch of idiots, die." And your seed, all of you. And this man comes over, taps the guy on the shoulder next to me to get up, and this man sits down next to me. Crosses his arms. He says, "Hey, buddy." What do you want? He said, "I remember what it was like to feel just like you feel right now." I said, "Oh, you do, huh? Why don't you just tell me how I feel?" He said, "No, I'll tell you how I felt." And he began to tell me what it was like to live, breathe air, and walk around this planet without a bottle of whiskey and without a God. And when he did it, he was nothing but a terrorist, living life without a solution. And this man began to talk to me, and I'll tell you what, it's really clear what happened. It's on page 18 of our book, man. This is my experience. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in just a few hours. Until such understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. And what that man did is he just won my confidence in that moment. That man began to talk to me about how he felt, talk to me about what it was like just to seep with anger. Guys, I had two factors working in my life at that time. There was rage and there was terror. And that was it. That's all I knew. And they sat on my shoulders. And I went about listening to this man, and the moment he began to talk, it disarmed me from the very core. I still hated the rest of the force, but this guy was okay, right? And I didn't ask this man to, but this man began to follow me everywhere. He just began to show up at the treatment center I was at. I'd be like, "Hey, what are we doing here, dude?" They're like, "Mike, Josh is here for you." I was like, "What? I didn't ask Josh to come. You know, what's going on?" And sure enough, he'd be there. And some days he'd take me out to eat, some days. So what this man began to do is he began to take me through the process of these 12 steps. And what this man began to do is he began to help me escape a very strong dilemma that we talk about and how it works, right? We talk about rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not are people who will not completely give themselves to the simple program. You know, like where it gets down to, we start talking about, oh my God, give me a second. There we go. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not commit to give themselves to the civil program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. I was at that place, guys. I was constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. I honestly was. I was so entrenched in delusion, I didn't know a way out. And so what this man began to do is he began to teach me how to be honest. And this man began to show me how this thing really works. And it started here. It started with the capacity for honesty. So let me tell you how that looks. It looks like this. I come to him one day and he says, man, how's it going? I'm like, man, it sucks. You ever had that? It just sucks. It's rough. I don't like it. He's like, yeah? Like, yeah, sobriety sucks. Everything sucks. He's like, what happened? I'm like, they took a TV cord out of our room and, you know, we got to go do this event and they do that. You know, I got to go to this meeting where people aren't really sober. And he's like, oh, so sounds like sobriety's okay. Sounds like not getting what you want sucks. So why don't we try saying this, Michael? Repeat after me. Not getting what I want sucks. Sobriety is okay. You know? I'd be like, I just miss my wife. He'd be like, oh, you do? What do you miss about your wife? I'm like, you know, just the way she loved me. She was such a good woman. I want to do things right. He said, oh, that's so. And we have a little further conversation, and what we find out is that I didn't miss my wife at all. I didn't really even love my wife. I loved whiskey. What I wanted was sex validation and security. So I had to repeat after him. I just want sex validation and security from women. This is not something that's comfortable to do, guys. But I began to do it. And this man, I was real fussy. He said, so Mike, how do you feel? I'm like, I feel like, I don't know. How do I feel, Josh? How do I feel? That's how it was there. But this guy began to take me through this journey. And he taught me how to look at my life honestly. And he went through this process, and guys, here's where it really gets crazy, man. I was sober for about 45 days at this time, and wanting to drink all the time, every day. If I'd have been outside of that treatment center, I'd have been drunk. I wanted to drink, going to meetings, doing these steps, and I just don't know where that happiness is. You know what I mean? I don't know where it is. I don't know where this thing comes from. And he said, we've been working together for about a week, and he said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get you to God as quickly as possible. And you need to be asking God to take this. So what happens is he gets me, we get in his truck one day, we get back, we read through this book a little bit, and we talk about this idea, this concept of turning my will and my life over to the care of God. And he says, here's what I want you to do. The book says that it's better to do this alone than with someone that might misunderstand. And Michael Shope, I'm pretty sure that you think the entire world misunderstands you. So you are going to go through this by yourself. I want you to go up to your little rehab room and do that. So I said, okay. So I take the book, right? And I go up into the rehab room. And by this time, guys, I have all this honesty and all this awareness of what's really going on in my life. I have all this pain and all this hurt, and it's all tied and swirled around with rage and terror. I want to kill everything around me. I want to run from it all. I want to hide. I want to attack. I don't know what's going on, but I can't sit still. And I go up into my room, and I'm like, all right, take it down, third step prayer, what a freaking page step to prayer. You know what I mean? That's what I'm doing. But I open up the book and I get into my room, and here's what I do. As much of an attitude as I have, I still have this perfectionism element to me, you know what I mean? Like, now that no one's looking, I'm going to make sure I do it perfect. So that night, I get up there, I make sure no one else is in the apartment that I'm in, keep checking out the door, shut it, and I go over and stand by my little bed, And I start to read. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. For lead me to bond of thyself, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties and victory over them will bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. I've seen this in church. God, I offer myself to you to build. And I just do it. Guys, I probably said this prayer 35 times. I tried on my knees. God, I offer myself. You know what I mean? I'm just going at it. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, and I did it. And finally, I just took this book and I just threw it off to the side. And in that night, I got down on my bed. I'm laying in this little mattress. We had these little twin-size mattresses, the plastic things, you know what I mean? And I had two pillows. One was for my head, and the other one was for between my legs. And what I would do is I would, you guys know, you all use pillow between your legs. It's cool. But I was laying in this bed, man, and I tell you what, I slid over to one side, and I took this pillow out between my knees, and I laid it down beside my head, and I looked into that pillow, and it was just like it came over me. I remember it like it was my first drink. I looked in that pillow and I just said, God, I need you to come lay with me. And I need you to help me. You can have whatever I got. So I'll tell you, it ain't much right now. If I get a car one day, you can have it, use what you want. If I get money, you can use it however you want. I promise, dude, I'll treat these guys like with respect and not like as resources. I'll treat these women with dignity, not like objects. I'll be good to the best of my ability, man. If you want me to die an alcoholic death, I'll do it. But if you want me to be sober, you've got to heal me. Because it's not going to go on much longer. And man, I'm telling you what, as I lay there, I could almost feel. It was just like his arms wrapped around me. It was like the hand of God just pressed into my chest. And I just knew, guys. I knew. Like, it was like, Baba, I got you. I got you. I got you. And, I wept that whole night. And I woke up the next day, man, I'm going to tell you what. What happened that next day was that terror and that rage, it went away. And it became fear and anger. And I got 12 steps to deal with fear and anger. I knew. That's one thing. Number two is I knew I had a God that was going to carry me. And I went out, man. I began to conquer. I just began to attack guys. And what happens over the course of these next 6 months, I mean, it starts to go rapid fire succession, man. Like, I get in there and I just start tearing into this 4-step, man, and I start ripping it open. And oh my gosh, it was like I could see me for the first time. Like, steps 1 through 3, what happened was I got right relationship with God. It wasn't pretty, man, but it was right. And then steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, I get into these and I get right relationship with myself. Which means when I look in the mirror, the man that I see is the man that stands. And there's no BS. And then I just push in, and then steps 9 through 8 and 9, I get right relationship with you. And then it's like all of a sudden, man, in this process, in this treatment center, I'm telling you, man, I wasn't in there for 5 months, man, and I just caught fire on this thing. And I just began to find myself in a position where it seemed stuff like dishes in the sink. I went from a place of being like, who's the punk that left all this crap here, to, man, I wonder if these guys are okay. I wonder what's on their mind. My thoughtfulness of others just began to just come. And I'm telling you, I don't know where it came from, guys. I have no clue. I began to get into this process, and I started, like, sponsoring guys. My treatment center was not 100% fond of that. Like, but it started to happen, so I was sponsoring in secret. It's true. I had like my own little underground culture. I'm like, don't tell anyone, but here's what we're going to do. Make it to hatchery on Monday. Get there early. Roger that. You know? It was so cool. And I'm just running around there doing that, right? I'm getting into these things. I'm starting to make amends, man. I'm starting to clean up this record. One of the guys I was sponsoring, man, this guy ends up dying, right? Almost. They find him in one of these recovery houses. He had to let me go. It was a crazy story, man, because I wasn't sober long enough to be his sponsor. But you know what ends up happening? This guy overdoses, and they find him on a floor like hours and hours later in this recovery house. And for some reason, the people that find him call me. And so I Uber from the treatment center over to the hospital. You know, I just fall out, dude. Get to the hospital, and I don't know what I'm doing. But I get there, you know, and I get a hold of his parents and the treatment center, and I get a hold of the recovery house people, and I tell them what's going on. Man, we get them all together. That man can barely, you know, he's lucky to even have his life or his legs. You know what I mean, today. But what ends up happening is I meet these people that run the treatment center, and they're like, and who are you? Who are you? I'm like, here's what you need to be thinking about, ma'am. You can't just run a recovery house like this. So she's like, well, do you want to manage it? I'm like, yes I do. You know? So, like, I leave this treatment center, like, I'm 6 months sober, managing 2 recovery houses on Park Heights in Baltimore. You know what I mean? I'm like, you don't go out the house, don't go left. You know what I mean? Just stay right, you know? One way is Jewish, one way is you get shot. It's just how that works. Or you get high. Or you get high and shot. You know? You don't get shot by the Jewish unless you walk in the house. You know, you just go down there, man. It's crazy. And it was just this wild dynamic that was going on. And I just all I'm finding is this: is like I'm finding that, you know, I had this job opportunity. Right? I'm applying for all these jobs. I'm just applying, and nothing's hiring me. Right? I think, oh, maybe I'm going to be a barber. Maybe I'm going to go work at Nordstrom's. Maybe I'm going to do this. Everywhere I go, guys, nothing. So finally, somebody said, why don't you just go back to the hotel business, you know? Why don't you just go be like a bellman or something, you know? Be a, whatever, dude. Or be a bellman. Like, I don't have a good record in the hotel business. Let me just tell you that, right? So I go to this place and I apply for this job, and these people, they come, they do this interview for me. And they're like, so tell me about yourself. And I'm like, oh, here it goes. So I just tell them, you know, here's what I was, here's what happened. I drank enough freaking liquor to kill a small farm animal on a daily basis, and I lost it all. I live in a rehab, and the lady's listening to me, and her eyes getting this big. She's like, oh. And she's like, well, my husband's a recovering alcoholic. I've never known him drinking, but your story sounds like it. Let me introduce you to the GM. So he takes me to the GM. I'm like, he says, so tell me about yourself, son. I'm like, oh, God. So I tell him the story, you know, and he's like, oh. Yeah. And so this guy says, well, I tell you what, why don't we... He said, so you live in a treatment center? I said, I do. He's like, you live in a rehab and you work? I said, right to that. He said, okay. I said, but I got to do meetings every night. I got 4 IOPs a week. I got to see my therapist on Thursday and this day. I got a lot to do, man. You're right. But you need to work part-time. He's like, do they drug test you at this place? I said, twice a week. He's like, okay, good. Do you have a sponsor? I said, yeah. He's like, what fellowship are you in? I said, AA. He said, do you have him just to satisfy the rehab, or do you actually talk to him? I said, I talk to him every day. He said, get HR. HR comes up and he says, this is funny. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give this man a job. He's going to bring in his treatment schedule every week, and you're going to schedule him around that until he's out of treatment. I'll have my eye on you, son. I said, I'm hired for now. Guys, I worked my way into that job making $10 an hour. A year and a half later, I was managing the entire front end of the house. You know what happened? I was looking for places to live, couldn't find anywhere to live. I'm living in a recovery house. You know how much that wears on you? Now I manage a recovery community of 5 houses in its own cul-de-sac, you know what I mean? This place has built an entire area for me with a living room for my kids to come and stay with me. My kids talk to me in their life. My wife's not sure she wants to divorce me anymore. They're getting ready to move to North Carolina next week. I'm helping them. I said, so do you want me to move to North Carolina too? She said, well, no, I'm not saying that. You stay in Maryland. And my kids are like, Dad, you're a better dad in Maryland than you are in Virginia. Just stay there. I'm like, what? Yeah, and my kids come to meetings and they're like, Dad, how many guys are you helping now? And I'm like, too many. And, you know what I mean? And they come to the house and they'll be like, my kids will be quick. They'll ask you, what step you on, buddy? And they're fast with it, man. But here's the thing, right? Everything that's happened in my life has just been this series of, from that moment where I encountered God. I have a friend that says, a really good friend that says, God is a gentleman. He only comes where he's invited, and he only stays where he's made to feel welcome. And so, I invite God into all I do. I live in a way to make God feel welcome. I care for others with all I have, almost to a fault. I sponsor a ridiculous amount of people, and I work with a ridiculous amount more, and I live on the front lines, and I'm going to tell you what, there's nothing I do. God just works on these men through me, as long as I stay out of the way. The only thing I consistently don't do is follow the plan that's in my head. I have one tonight. If you want to hear my plans for the week, I'll be happy to share them afterwards. I have them for everything. I have fear. I have anger. It still comes up. I can get psychotic. Ask any of these men up here. But I haven't found a solution, and what's happened is my relationship with God has given me right relationship with you and myself, and Alcoholics Anonymous has provided me with a life that is sufficient substitute for alcohol. And for that, I'm grateful. Thanks.
Again, let's thank Michael for coming out. Thank you, sir. Good stuff. Again, a reminder, it is customary for us to formally thank our speakers, personally, let them know if you were impacted by their talk. It's important not only to them, but to our